Artificial Intelligence Rule of Law, Session 2 of the 3rd. This is Session 10. Let us do a recap of what we discussed in the first session. In the first of the 3 sessions, we began with introducing the key concepts in this theme and why there are some concerns about the impact of AI on the rule of law, both as a theory as well as a practice. Since machine language systems have been adopted by state as well as private sectors, we looked at what are the different purposes they have been used for and some of the concerns raised by them. Similarly, we also looked at cases in AI in USA and Europe. We illustrated as to why and how concerns about adoption AI are also concerns about human rights and entitlements. This topic, rights, entitlements, and then AI usage in public service particularly, will be thing which we will recurrently discuss about in this course. So there are some issues which are very interesting, at the same time very challenging. Now, there is a complex relationship between machine language driven adjudication and rule of law. Because machine language driven adjudication is based on data, training done by it, and then it is taken as the model. Based upon the model, it is runs, it comes up. Whereas the rule of law, we always look at not models, we always look at the current ground level reality, we look at humans, we look at institutions, and then we put things in a context. In there, empirical contingencies play a significant role. When we say empirical contingencies that could be very much on the ground, or contingencies that could arise on account of the changed factors. So a human judgment or judgment given by a judge, or when a court gives a judgment, it does not give a judgment that is based solely on data and facts. It also takes into account other factors, particularly the way things have changed. Although judges do take into account a lot of background details by other things, not everything is reduced to some statistical probability that this person, if granted a bail, will commit a crime, or this person has committed a fraud, or this person is likely to default after the 3rd installment given his income and his past credit record. We do not take decisions like that. We try to be flexible because we are humans. Whereas the complex relationship between adjudication and rule of law is something important. Rule of law does not say, or rule of law when it talks of equality of opportunity, or when we say that there is a fair trial, or when we say that there is a due process, or when we say that decisions have to be on the basis of transparency and other things, we are not reducing people to potential probabilities or statistical numbers. But ML systems, being systems that are trained on data and numbers, they look at that more from that perspective, which is very problematic in every sense. When humans decide, they also take into account social and economic conditions, but then we put them in the right context. Whereas the problem with ML system is that everything they reduce to data, in the sense that everything is linked up with some probability or linked up with some sort of association. That is something like you do not assess a person in the broader socio-economic context. You look at a person, you take up everything, in the sense that you take up everything and then look at the numbers, then data matching, then also look at the probability based on the equations driven, and then you derive at the result. So there is a huge gap the way rule of law in practice operates and the way ML systems do things. One more thing, when we talk of equality, we talk of both equality in terms of procedure, equality in terms of formal. So the procedural rule of law or the due process in the American context presupposes equality, in the sense that equality is given. It is as a basic axiom. And whether you talk of the formal justice system or any justice system based on the rule of law, equality is something that is at the cornerstone. Whereas in the case of machine language systems, we cannot guarantee that such an equality prevails. On the other hand, to look at this way, is the equality in the light of rule of law is really a equality in practice, or is it an equality that is for many people remains only in paper? This is a criticism which is very valid for the simple reason we know that those who have better resources, those who have access to better resources, or those who can pull strings here and there always leverage the law better, not just the law, anything. So, on one hand, the paradox here is that we can simply say rule of law rule of law gives everyone the equality, or its guarantees that you will be treated equal. Whereas in practice, what is happening is not equality but is something else. We will not go into that in detail, but whenever we see that there are problems with algorithms, automated decision making, we can also say that there are a lot of issues with the rule of law in practice, which again we need to address that. In the sense that we cannot poist rule of law as an ideal situation or ideal condition vis-a-vis within quotes the ML systems that discriminate, that show bias. That sort of comparison is not one we are talking of. Then the thing which is also equally important is that we need to look at equal distribution of equal resources, which is not happening, which is not at all the reality. On the other hand, a ML based system, or we call it as algorithmic decision making or AI system, this sort of thing is not there because there is no question of distributing any resources, only data, available data, information, decision, that's all. So we cannot take a stand that everything is fine with rule of law and nothing is fine with ML systems and AI. Nor can we take a stand that since there are certain things wrong with AI and ML systems, however imperfect or however problematic the rule of law is, we should always see that the rule of law is an ideal which we should try to assess the ML systems, and then say that even if ML systems fail in 10% or 5%, we should not use them because we are able to do things better despite all the problems with the way we practice rule of law. But the question here is, in human managed court system, Ross emphasized the need for judicial independence, and then according to Fuller, the robustly independent judiciary is a must, whereas Jeremy Waldron focus on human driven adjudicative process. So in the human managed courts, we have this judicial independence is given granted, independent judiciary is given granted, and then human driven adjudicative process where people litigate, people argue, people drive the process, arguments, counter arguments, mediation, arbitration, case, decision, appeal, final decision. So it is a totally adjudicative process driven by humans, whereas in the case of AI and ML systems, it is not so. So, technological advances in one way can be thought that they offer new avenues to achieve rule of law. In the sense that, put it this way, if the technological advances including AI and ML can make things easy for people who otherwise are feeling that rule of law is not serving them well in terms of equality, why don't we go for them? Or if an AI and ML based system can deliver fast justice, quicker justice in a much more efficient way, why should not we try that option instead of arguing that they are not the ones which meet the 7% criteria of rule of law? So the dilemma in a country like India is, when there are crores and crores of cases pending, and then when people struggle to get their cases listed, and then judges struggle to deliver judgments or even to hear arguments in the courts on account of the ever increasing overload of the cases, what harm would be there if you use AI and ML in justice system? Or even if there are going to be some problematic things, wouldn't be a better solution given the way the system works? So this is an area where people have to really think. There could be trade-offs, there could be potential harms, but still, if the efficiency of the system can be vastly improved by AI and AI-based systems, why not give them a chance? Why not put them up front and then say that we will try to harness them to the best possible extent. Now, some of the thing is that societal human goods we need to understand. Normative ambitions can be separated from traditional institutional forms, and conceptual institutional elements are less tightly connected. These we need not bother at this stage because these are more theoretical things which do not have much significance for our discussion. So one of the ways people have been saying is that, look, idea here is not to throw the baby with the bathwater. Idea here is to see that how AI-driven systems can adhere to or can be made sensitive to the rule of law principles. So principles of AI development, see if some of these things can be incorporated, would be better. So idea here is that there should be transparency in AI system creation, inclusivity in ensuring diverse participation, in the sense that this is something like user participation or stakeholder participation in designing, in assessing, or to testing like that. Then it should be accessible for all individuals. So instead of complaining about AI systems being problematic on account of discrimination bias and then not meeting the criteria of rule of law, why don't we try to look at the other way around and then say what needed to be done to make them better? Is it transparency? Okay, bring in transparency in creation. Is it the problem of bias and discrimination on account of non-representational data or people are not getting represented in the right way? Then make participation as a criteria in deciding systems and developing them. Then the third thing is make it more accessible in the sense that ensure that everyone who wants to access legal services is able to access services driven by AI and ML. So if these things can be taken into account, why can't we say that AI systems which meet the full rule of law requirements can be developed, tested and run? Then when AI systems are developed with the core interest and needs of the people, they will definitely be compliant with the rule of law. But ultimately, what is rule of law? Rule of law is not something that is floating in the air. It is not an abstract principle and utopia. Idea of rule of law, or for that matter any legal principle, should be to develop, should be in the putting people's interest in the core and to serve people's interest. So if we cannot distinguish, we cannot differentiate that in the sense that no, we cannot disentangle that from any ideal. Why don't we say that AI system should be developed with that in mind, and that itself will make it 100% compliant with the rule of law. So these are some of the suggestions given by proponents of AI-driven justice, AI-driven civil and criminal and administrative law, so that AI systems are able to address lot of problems which otherwise we find with the normal judicial system. So question is, in this AI age, should we rethink rule of law? Should we say that our rule of law conceptualization is obsolete, we need to be updated, it need to be something that is kicking up with the Jones and keeping with the times? So challenges come here on account of the black box issue which we have already discussed, lack of transparency, systematic biases, and then human insight, human involvement. Necessity for human oversight in automated decision is necessary if you really think in terms of rule of law. And obligation for reason and explainability. Why? Because rule of law is something that is antithetical to arbitrary decision making and antithetical to opaqueness or non-transparency. So when human involvement AI can make this possible in the sense that with human oversight there could be more scope for reason and explainability when that is made as a compulsory option or obligation, that if you are a developer or if you are someone who is going to put the system into use, you are obligated to reason and explain as to how it functions, what is the parameters on which it is trained, and then what are the limitations of the training models, and then what is the way it could be understood by common persons. So if we can bring in varied human involvement in AI application development, like people who could be likely impacted, women, children, elderly people and all. Human involvement will make AI much more rule of law compatible than merely complaining about rule of law is not, criteria is not met by AI. So, when we really think in terms of unprecedented benefits from AI applications, we should also take this into account. But the risk of digital dividing becoming worse is also there, but then that is an issue, more a social technical issue that would be tackled. So the risk of AI we can put one side, the benefits of AI we can put on the other side, and then identify which elements enhance the risk, which elements will enhance the benefit, and then try to reduce them, try to enhance them. So if we can do that, we can list out certain measures, or we can list out certain things to be done so that AI systems and ML systems meet the criteria of rule of law. So in this, when we do it, we are not rethinking rule of law in the AI age. Rather, we are trying to reinvent AI through the criteria of rule of law. However, this may appear to be something that is very sweet or that is something that is very nice, but then there are issues in terms of both theory and practice, and there are also other issues like how malleable a technology can be, or how much of a technology can be made to meet so many criteria which are not part of the technical domain. Or is it possible that we develop a technology that is technically efficient at the same time fulfilling all the things we want, like ticking boxes? Oh, it promotes transparency, good. It promotes public participation, good. Oh, it promotes explainability and reasoning capacity, good. Is it really possible to build a system? Or are we talking of something that is very utopian in the sense that the antithesis of an efficient machine language and AI systems which will be in practice? This is certain thing which we need to really look into, because when critics point out, optimists point out the other potentials. So the reality or the fact of the matter could be somewhere in between. When we talk of AI, it is always important to understand few things. One, AI is not a single technology. AI is not a single and simple application. And more importantly, it can be conceptualized as a boutique of technologies and approaches. And then AI is a very broad field. I mean, today if you look AI or the way it has traversed from the mid 50s to now, AI is not a simple thing today. It is there across everywhere. Robotics, AI can be integrated. AI can be integrated in IR4, or AI can be integrated in factory. AI can be integrated in many applications. And more importantly, scope of technology is also very vast. So when we say Internet of Things, AI is something that can be part and parcel of that. And what is the idea behind talking so much about AI? Are we talking of AI because it's a good, fantastic idea, or something that is very intellectually satisfying and then theoretically challenging? No. When we talk of artificial intelligence, we are talking of a system, or we are talking of a technical device, or for that matter a system that can perform tasks that require human intelligence. In other words, the benchmark here is human intelligence, and we are trying to measure up artificial intelligence to that level, and then the ultimate aim is that AI will reach that level. So AI as a broad field is being developed with that objective in mind. So when we keep that in mind, then we will not feel that AI is something that is totally alien, in the sense that we should think of AI as something that we should always think negatively. No. And we should understand, from the days in which AI was conceptualized as in a very preliminary way in the mid 50s, and then the conference held in Dartmouth College, many things have happened. There have been AI winters, there have been peaks and troughs in AI development, and then there was a period of AI trying to develop. People expected that expert systems will make lot of difference, but nothing happened. Suddenly, neural network, suddenly machine learning, suddenly certain developments sprung AI into somewhere else. So what has happened in the last 2 decades in AI is simply unparalleled. So when we talk of today, neural networks and deep learning, they are moving closer to human intelligence in one way or other, in the sense that they are very technically sophisticated, very efficient, with high predictive efficiency accuracy. So the problem here is, as the AI's performance, capabilities and capacity improves, as it becomes more and more complex, the black box models due to output understanding difficulty would be there. But then we should not try to discard AI, we should not put that as a major criticism against AI. Now, some of the things like black box models, lack of transparency, difficulty in understanding, if these things could be addressed in a way, then it will be a better one. But the problem here is that if we assess AI through the idea of due process or through the lens of due process, then the major stumbling block or the major negative things that are to be associated with AI are the lack of transparency, the black box models, and then the difficulty in explaining and understanding the automated decisions, and then the way that can cumulatively erode the trust and accountability, that could be a major issue. And then the problem of interpreting what the AI decisions, or the problem of understanding how the whole thing works. So if we put through the due process lens, AI may not be able to fulfill that 100%, although we can always say that AI is highly competent, highly efficient, accuracy rates is fantastic or as good as humans. But we also need to take into one more thing here. Problem here is, AI being a new technology, there is lot of misunderstanding, unnecessary fears, and then undue concerns about it, for the simple reason people are not aware. So if people are aware of AI, what is AI working on and how does AI work, and more importantly, what is behind AI? It is a black box in one sense, but it is not just a black box. It is something that we can understand, trained people can help us to understand, and then there is a whole literature which tells you how to make sense of AI, how to understand the algorithms, and then how AI has developed over the period. So if we can train AI literacy like any other literacy, people will be able to understand things better. On the other hand, AI can do wonderful things for improving normal literacy of people, particularly in education. So instead of complaining against AI, we need to engage with AI, the content it creates, whether it you call of generative AI or the AI given judgments or orders passed by AI, and then try to understand as to how it does, or this is part of the AI literacy. In the sense that we need to come to grips with AI, its functioning, we need AI literacy, and then we need to engage with the content. Then we need to understand how the algorithms work. We also need to understand the limitations and biases in AI results. This again will be part of the AI literacy. AI literacy will not be one where you always talk high and good of AI, try without saying anything negative about AI. And then AI literacy is a good idea where we will encourage responsible and informed use. This is important, particularly when people use AI for all sorts of criminal activities, including deep fakes, misinformation, disinformation, AI generated fraud applications and all. So people have to be taught about AI, people should be made AI literate, but also about their responsibility, and then how they should use AI with responsibility as well as with informed understanding. So there is a definition of AI literacy which the text I am going to refer to or have discussed with. So one way to address the rule of law problem in AI is that rule of law problem is there for the simple reason many people are not aware of AI, what exactly AI, and then why they should understand AI's functioning, its pluses and minuses, the negative or the positive impacts, so that people neither fear nor worship AI. So if we talk of AI literacy, then Many of the concerns on rule of law can be addressed through AI literacy by empowering people to engage with AI better. So this is one way to say that rule of law as an idea will be eroded or will be negatively impacted by AI. No, rule of law can be a good principle and criteria, but AI literacy will help us to understand AI better, and through that we will be able to understand some of the criticisms which are raised against AI from the rule of law perspective. So put it another way around, rule of law, as we said, the basic idea germinated in the time of Aristotle. It developed further. We are in 21st century. So when there are distinct models of rule of law in different countries, including UK, USA, France and Germany, of course, Indian perspective rule of law is equally distinct, and because of the Supreme Court's judgments, the jurisprudence and then the legal letters are available here. But rule of law can also be thought of two basic things. There are two archetypes or two models. One, Aristotle's rule of reason, which again, the core idea of rule of reason, reasoning capacity, and then comes rule of institutional restraint. Now, the idea of institutional restraint became important, as we discussed, when monarchs, kings and queens asserted themselves as they are above supreme, they are above law, nobody can control them, no institution is above them. So Montesquieu's rule of law idea, which again is also germane to the French thinking on rule of law, is more on institutional restraint. Institutional restraint on anyone or any authority that claims too much power. Or institutions are there to ensure that the powers are restrained or the powers are not abused, and more importantly, rule of law, a key component is that institutions will ensure that nobody is able to take full control or assert themselves as above institutions. So from a French perspective, if we look at the rule of law, we should look at that as a model of institutions constraining the power holders or the institutions constraining the government as well as the presidents or the prime ministers. On the other hand, the information technology revolution, which has been there at least for 50 years now, or the PC revolution or the laptop ones and the mobile, if you take everything, they have also facilitated a lot of things in the sense that they have made information available to almost everyone. And then people have been helped in informed decision making, service delivery has engaged terribly, in a much better way. Civic engagement has happened in unimagined ways. So the question here is that let us look at black box nature of AI systems, widening digital divide. Yes, there are issues, but the way information technology has addressed many of the things in the past, particularly access to information, and then increasing service delivery, and then bringing more transparency, and then making people services more easily available. These challenges can be met, can be addressed, instead of trying to say that rule of law is something which is supreme. So based on that, we should not be very much sanguine or hopeful about the AI systems meeting that criteria. So the black box problem in AI, which again and again haunts, can be addressed in a way. Digital divide can be addressed in a way, and then all these challenges, including inequality or lack of access to information, all of them can be addressed. So the rule of law, if there are some old concerns like how technology will impact society, what will happen if the technology is going to impact society negatively, or taking Jacques Ellul's famous the technological society perspective, looking at technology as the deterministic approach, we should go beyond that. This is one perspective, that the issues are new, but the concerns have been there even earlier. In the sense that what would happen in terms of institutional restraint is a much older French idea. So we can also think in terms of that when we come to engage with AI in law and justice. We can try to import the idea of institutional restraint to the modern times and then try to build it up as some sort of mechanisms to ensure that there are reasonable restraints on AI systems behavior or AI systems taking unilateral decision. So how do we go about it? What sort of things we need to do, that is something we need to engage with, instead of complaining that AI systems are going to impact negatively rule of law. But if rule of law is in flux and it is amenable to multiple interpretations with mechanisms for curtailing state arbitrary power, but another concept of rule of law is that it is also something that is needed for a just society, because equality of opportunity, equality, everything is there as part of just society. So from that perspective, there should be a mechanism for determining rules, and then rule of law is a concept that should allow human to flourish. So if personal goals and ideals can be met without harming the society, the rule of law criteria could be met. And more importantly, we can also say that rule of law is not something that restrains individuals. Rule of law, in the sense in their potential for growth and development within the legally permissible one. So achieving personal goals and ideals is a good thing, as long as the acceptable restraints are not violated. But looking at technology as an inhibiting factor may not be always the best approach. And however much the technology is susceptible to manipulation categorization, we should look at it. But the counter argument here is, or the counter argument to this whole argument is very simple. Technology is more than a mere tool. Technology comes with power, or power is inbred or imbibed in technology. So it is not the old argument that you can cut a knife or you can cut a head with a knife. Or it is not an old argument that technology is neutral, however good or however bad we make of that is our capacity, our intention, and the way we do with the things. Because technology not only a mere tool, that way tool can reorganize society, the way tool can reorganize social relationships, or the way the tool can impact institutions is something that is need to be understood very carefully. And there's a whole historical thinking about it, and there's a lot of literature available on it, ranging from Langdon Weiner's classic Do Artifacts Politics to the recent debates on agency in AI, or will AI affect the human agency, and then the whole debates on responsible AI, ethics in AI, or how do we make AI more accountable, or even forget all these things. A simple idea that technology cannot be taught as a tool, but emerging technologies are much more than that. Emerging technologies cannot be thought to be equivalents of knife. A knife is a very normal tool. On the other hand, emerging technologies like AI or developments in synthetic biology, or for that matter in other technologies like quantum technology or any technology like neurotechnology, they are not simply technologies. They are also powerful tools is one, but then they also have their own internal logic, inner logic, and then the way technology processes is also raises concerns about power, to whom the power accumulates, who becomes powerful. So there are multiple views on rule of law and AI. One set of people argue that rule of law will not be diminished, rule of law will not be abrogated or negated by AI. On the other hand, AI is something that can help us in achieving rule of law. It can even help us in meeting the criteria of rule of law if we address certain things, like if we make people AI literate, if we address some of the concerns expressed, if we could develop AI systems with participation, with less bias, with better understanding and bringing more transparency, we need not fear that AI is an antithesis of rule of law. So the negative aspects which we have discussed earlier in detail, like why it could be problematic for rule of law to think that AI is just yet another technology without any consequence. So there are multiple views. Then we also need to bring insights from other disciplines like STS, Science Technology Studies, Philosophy of Technology, then technology of techno sciences, history of science, sociology of science and technology to understand how different disciplines look at AI, because looking at AI from the lens of rule of law or from a legal perspective is necessary but not sufficient. And even to understand technology regulation or technology governance, law as a discipline or law when it deals with technology regulation needs to borrow concepts, need to borrow ideas and principles from other disciplines so that it can come to grips with an emerging technology, a bigger technology, a technology that has got huge potential like AI. In the next class, we will take this discussion forward and also look at some of the potential solutions or some of the potential approaches that have been put forth in this whole debate, and we will conclude with that. See, the idea of having 3 sessions on rule of law and AI is to highlight that one, AI, although it's a very new technology, very relatively speaking, is something that can have impact on rule of law. However, whether it's positive or negative, it's too early to predict. Two, when we think in terms of AI and law and justice, we also need to put that in a context of legal principles, legal concepts, and then legal ideals. So when we do that, rule of law is a good example to understand the relationship between technology and law, or the relationship between law, technology and society, because ultimately rule of law is also about the society and then citizens and about all of us. So rule of law as a concept, as a practice is something that could be understood in light of technological developments, or we can even try to say that what could be the impact of technological developments and rule of law. In the next class, we also look at some of the things like rule of law is one, but then there are concerns about human rights. There are other concerns as well. So taking a broader perspective, in the 3 sessions, we will look at the questions that arise when we go beyond a traditional utilitarian perspective on AI or seeing AI as a mere tool. But a course on law and AI and justice has to deal with that in complexity, because justice is justice. We are not talking of simply crude law or justice in a very abstract sense. So the debate on rule of law can also be linked up with the idea of justice, fairness. That is why we bring in again and again the due process and a whole lot of legal concepts here. Thank you.